The Somme, a name that echoes through history, one of the bloodiest battles of the First World War, and a place where entire generations were lost to the brutality of conflict. But for Ulster, it was more than just a name. It's a place where the very identity of a people was tested in fire and blood. It's a place where the men of the 36th Ulster Division faced horrors beyond imagination and yet stood firm in their resolve. There were men from Belfast, Londonderry, Armagh, and countless towns and villages across Northern Ireland. Many were farmers, tradesmen, and labourers, and yet they carried something heavier than just rifles. They carried the weight of their community, their culture, and their beliefs. For them, this wasn't just about war. It was about defending Ulster's place in the United Kingdom, about standing for what they believed in at a time when their world was on the brink of change. On the 1st of July 1916, they went over the top at the Somme, advancing into a hail of machine gun fire. The losses were devastating, but their bravery became a defining moment in Northern Ireland's history. Alrighty folks, welcome along to another episode of the Made to Pray podcast. Today, we are at the Somme Museum here to explore the legacy of the Battle of the Somme and how the memory of the men connected to the 36th Ulster Division, shape Ulster's identity, and how that memory echoes, in the stories that we tell, the symbols that we cherish, and the sacrifices that we remember. In this episode, we're not just walking through history, we're stepping in to the very soul of Ulster, a place where we know that the past lives on in the present. And I suppose where the story of the Somme is as much about who we are now as it is about who we were then. We're joined today, the person that's kind of helping us out, and we'll get a wee chat with him a wee bit later on as well, is Austin. Austin, absolutely delighted that you're here with us.
Nice to meet you.
Brilliant. So you're going to give us a wee bit of a walk right here, aren't you, in terms of, I know you're not going to give us a full tour, but I know we're just going to get a wee bit of a walk right in some of the things that you have on display here, yeah?
You're very welcome to the Somme Museum.
Thank you. So this is where it would all start then. This particular place here is where most guests, when they arrive, would actually...
When the groups come in here, we start the tour just between the three cabinets there, with the backdrop of the Ulster Tower behind us. And we tell the story of the three Irish divisions that fought in the First World War. The 10th Irish Division at the top, the 16th Irish Division at the bottom, and the 36th Ulster Division in the middle. And so we tell their stories.
Brilliant. Okay, great. And then obviously there's quite a lot of stuff that's on the walls and stuff right here. There's a lot of the pictures and things there in regards to that. Yeah.
Pictures that have been donated by people who have come into the museum. This one here is of the engineers, Royal Engineers, the Ulster Division. It's a very clear picture. I have people coming in to me who would have had family members who were in the Royal Engineers attached to the Ulster Division, and this photograph is so clear that they would take mobile pictures of it and to see if they can pick out their relatives. We tell the story of the personalities of the war itself.
Okay.
Up here we have Gavrilo Princip, who assassinated the Archduke Ferdinand of Austria and his wife Sophie in Sarajevo. And some say this is the spark that lit the flames of war in Europe.
Great.
And then on round to Kemal Ataturk, the Turkish Prime Minister, then the Tsar Nicholas of Russia, Herbert Asquith, the Kaiser Wilhelm, round the corner, Lord Kitchener, and then in the middle of this picture over here, King George V.
Obviously, we'll see here, there'll be a presentation and stuff that would take place here.
Yeah, there's the video would come on here, and then once it's telling me really the start of the war, bringing in a lot of the names in, the big names in it, and the talking about the Schlieffen plan, the Germany's plan to attack into France.
And then we're moving into almost a street scene here, aren't we?
This here is a replica of Moneymore Market Square. And we had a veteran here called Leslie Bell, who came from Moneymore. And so we tell a wee bit about his story. And he probably heard news about the war from this gentleman, who is an itinerant preacher.
Right, okay. Great.
And so this section tells you that the story of home rule now we're coming into the recruiting office,
Right.
where we tell the story of what happens to men when they arrive into the recruiting office, what they would go through. And when we have the school kids here, and when there's young kids come in here, we put them into the uniforms, and we have helmets for them.
Brilliant.
We have rifles, and we show them, we go through the recruitment process with them.
You can make them do the eye test as well.
They do that. Yeah. I have it up here as well.
Brilliant.
So we tell them the story of the recruiting process as it goes.
And this is what it would have been laid out like. Obviously not with the same type of chairs or whatever else, but this would have been the.
You can see the men lined up along here. They're getting their height measured over here, and these two young lads in this picture, this big picture here.
Okay.
Two young lads who have come in to sign up, swearing on the Bible.
Right.
And the guy who's swearing them in is this gentleman here, the recruiting officer. And then we have the recruiting sergeant in the middle. So he would have probably be an old soldier, an old maybe Boer War soldier, who not fit for.
Not fit for this one, but he's getting people signed up.
Yeah.
Alrighty, brilliant. And then we also have some uniforms here that have been
donated. These are donated by lent by the National Museum of Ireland. Shades of green.
Okay.
And then this large picture is of Clandy Camp. Sorry. And up on top of the hill, you can see Lady Helen's Tower looking down into the men's camp. And we have an original tent pole that was taken out of one of these, a bell tent out of Clandy Camp.
Okay.
And here in this picture is of the 36th Ulster Division marching through Belfast on the 8th of May 1915. Within a few weeks, the Ulster Division then moved into Seaford in West Sussex. Okay. And then this section is our Women at War section. And we tell the story of the ladies who over 2 million women were employed during the First World War, because when the men went off to fight, the women, they weren't allowed to. So they took over the role of the men. Over 2 million women employed. And they would have become nurses, aid workers, ambulance drivers. Over 300 women killed in explosions in munitions factories. These guys are getting on the boat. They're heading to France. We're getting on the gangplank here. This is going to be the shortest trip we've ever made to France.
So you're saying this is the shortest journey we'll have ever taken to France?
Yeah,
all right. So
very short journey.
Okay. So we're down in France.
Welcome to France. So this section here is what we call the barn billet.
Right.
And when the men would have arrived into France, they wouldn't have went directly to the front line. They would have stayed maybe 3 or 4 miles behind it. And the officers in the would stay in a large chateau or a farmhouse. But the ordinary soldier, he'll stay in a place like this here.
And then where are we off to now then?
We're going to head into the trenches. This is our trench system. This is what it would have been like for a man. A lot darker.
Yeah.
The real thing, you would have been wading in a couple of feet of cold, muddy water, and you carrying about 60-pound weight on your back. And you would have had to be as quiet as a mouse as you're heading up to the front. So our first dugout here, this is a communications dugout. The means of communications would have been by telephone or by Morse code. We're going round now to see our sentry on the far side.
Okay.
So,
in terms of sort of realism here, what are we talking about? I mean, obviously, we're not saying the mud and stuff's here, but this is as close as it gets to what these guys would have been actually in then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was actually it's a Royal Engineer. His specifications. This was done. So the height wise is probably about right for a big trench system like this. Okay. With your sandbags, and this is the fire step that the men would have been standing on, and they would have been looking out for gas, anything like that. If they seen the gas cloud, they would get an item like this.
Right, okay. Wow, that's it. Used to see those at the football matches back in the day. There you go. That's it, exactly.
And this is the food that the men would eat.
Okay, so this is
Here we have bully beef, corned beef
Okay.
that the men would have been eating. McConaughey stew.
Right.
And of course, the hardtack biscuit down below.
And then we have, obviously, there's a casualty clearance station here as
Yeah,
well.
yeah. And so when he's lying in here, they have to keep an eye on him. He dare not fall asleep. If he fell asleep, the rats would move in on him.
Okay.
So they would post a sentry at the door probably just to keep an eye on him until they got him on down the line.
So it's getting quite dark here now.
We're heading round out in no man's land.
Alrighty, so this is just, obviously, you get past the trenches and then you're met with, obvious in terms of just chaos.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, you're attacking. You're going to meet up with a German barbed wire, and which was a lot thicker than British barbed wire,
Right.
and a lot of the times the trench mortar, the 2-inch trench mortar was used. This is one over here.
Mm-hmm.
Its nickname was the toffee apple,
Right, okay.
and its job was to break up the barbed wire. And a lot of the times it didn't explode.
Right.
So the men would have got up and the head over the top, and they would still come across
Right,
barbed wire that wasn't cut.
Wasn't done anything, right?
Yeah.
Oh, it's obviously hindered people's movements and stuff there,
Yeah.
And then obviously heading around to the other side here.
Yes.
What am I looking at here?
So we have our video comes on. We have 5 screens here.
Yeah.
Of our video, which is on for maybe 12 to 13 minutes. Then a large picture of ETAP, this ETAP cemetery. This is the largest of the French cemeteries.
Right, okay.
Over 11,500 graves in it. Some Second World War graves in it as well. It's an amazing sight because when you step out and look down into it, you look down into a big valley, and this is all you can see.
Okay, and then this is a familiar sight here.
Yeah, the Ulster Tower. In 2013, workmen were widening the roads at the tower, ready for the big commemorations in 2014 when they found the remains of 3 soldiers. One was found at the end of the boundary wall of the tower. He had Royal Irish Rifles insignia on him.
Okay.
And they think he maybe was in the 11th Battalion, the Royal Irish Rifles, because they were the ones who were attacking up where the tower sits.
Sure.
And the second soldier found he was in the Cambridgeshire Regiment, and that's all we know about these 2 soldiers.
Okay.
The third soldier was found was this gentleman here. He's called David Harkness Blakey, and David, he was actually an Englishman who came from the northeast of England, and he joined the 11th in a Skilling Fusiliers. And the reason we know David was he had a homemade identity bracelet on his arm. And David was killed on the 1st of July, 1916. He was killed in the lane that leads down into Thiepval Wood. And he had a son called Henry. Henry was killed at Dunkirk in the Second World War. Right. So there you had father and son. The 3 soldiers were buried in 2015. And Royal Irish Regiment soldier, you can see the burial party, and they were able to find David's great-granddaughter and other family members. They were all
be part of the service.
And the 3 soldiers are buried side by side, which is very apt because the distance they fell from each other isn't all that great.
Okay.
Anyway.
And then here we have another massive photograph.
Yeah. This is actually off, I think this is actually off the Irish Division. 16th Irish Division, and this is a lot of equipment that you can see. Some of the soldiers are wearing German helmets, and they've German machine guns as well. This is stuff that they captured and took. I think this is probably after the Battle of Guillemont or Ginchy, one of the 2. And
then we have obviously a number of medals and stuff here.
These are the 3 service medals that the soldiers would get after the war. This one here is the 1415 Star. Then we have the British War Medal and then the Victory Medal, because we actually won the war. And the British soldiers had nicknames for them. They called them Pip, Squeak and Wilfred, after cartoon characters. Yeah. The British soldiers had nicknames for everything that you can think of. and their nicknames. If you joined up in 1916, you would get these two medals here. They were known as Mutt and Jeff.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then obviously as we move in here, also we're then met with some of the, in terms of names in regards to people who obviously gave their lives here, and I suppose this highlights something that we were talking about as well in regards to the families, how families were affected as a result of the First World War.
Yeah.
In terms of the fact we can see loads of repeated surnames, all these and stuff, you know, and that there was, yeah,
Four Allens.
the Hugheses, there's four of those in terms of that, Johnstons and all that. And again, all very, very familiar names as well. I mean, I'm thinking about even people connected to my family, you know, the McCandlesses and Hawthorns, and even
a lot of people come in and when they look at this and they go, oh, that name,
yeah.
you know, as you say, just like yourself, you're seeing your own family names.
Yeah.
And I find that a lot when I'm taking a tour. The guys in the middle, they were the guys who never made it back home.
Okay.
And this gentleman here, Robert Phillamy,
Mm-hmm.
he actually was working in my hometown, so we claim him as well. But his family came from the Grosvenor Road, where this is the Drew Memorial Church on the Grosvenor Road. That's where this came out of.
Okay. And then we have the medals. Are these the same medals that we were talking about earlier on there?
These are the three medals. They're a collection. They belong to this soldier up here.
Yeah.
He's called Alexander Moore.
Mm-hmm.
Alexander was taken prisoner on the 21st of March, 1918. And he died of sepsis in May 1918. His wounds must have been infected. The date he was taken prisoner on was what was known as the Michael Offensive, Germany's last big major push, the Spring Offensive. And he died in Dusseldorf in Germany. And so the family had put his medals up here, done this carving.
Right, okay.
And this is his medal as well, but this is the medal that nobody wants, the death penny, or the penny. And so the family had put that carving up round it, and then it was donated to the museum. And if you look at this plaque here, you can see three Edmonds brothers.
Okay.
Sorry. Okay. You can see three Edmonds brothers, all killed. I think one was killed at sea, the other two on land. But so their parents would have got three death pennies for the lives of our three sons.
And then this is obviously the last section in regards to there's some stories there around, you know, about the home front, and then leading towards the idea of the end of the war as well there, you know. So I know that's just been a whistle stop tour. We probably could have done a lot more than that there, but I appreciate you taking us around and giving us a wee bit of an insight there. So thanks very much, Austin. So the connection between Ulster and the fields of the Somme runs deeper than history alone. It's a story that's written in blood, sacrifice, and unshakable resolve. So in 1916, when Europe was in full grip of the First World War and the horrors of what was going on there, thousands of young men from Ulster answered the call, not just to defend their country, but to defend their identity as well. The 36th Ulster Division was made up of all sorts of people, the farmers, labourers, etc., all volunteers, ordinary men bound together by an extraordinary sense of duty. But what was it about that Ulster spirit that shaped their role in one of the most bloody battles of World War I? To kind of help us answer that question, we have Austin here from the Somme Museum. Austin, welcome along to Be the Parade. Good to have you on. Austin, if we want to maybe start off with a link into this, how did the political situation in Ireland at the time influence Ulster men's commitment to the war effort?
You had the UVF forming 1911, 1912. They're getting ready. They're forming up to go against Home Rule. And so you had men from all over Ulster who would have been influenced by the political situation at that time. But you also would have had men who, it was 3 meals a day. And some of them very lucky to be eating
Sure.
one good meal in a day. So there was a lot more to it, but I think with Ulster men, it was embedded in them, in their spirit in a way, that they would be wanting to help Britain on its in its hour of need.
So we've talked a wee bit there, Austin, about the whole idea of home rule. What was home rule?
Well, home rule was Dublin would be the government,
Okay.
and so the Ulster people, they didn't want to be ruled by Dublin. They wanted to be ruled by Britain, and so that was when Lord Carson comes in, Captain Craig. They come in, and you had Ulster Day being formed on the 28th of September, 1912, where men signed the Declaration, the Covenant. Sorry, the women signed the Declaration. Men signed the Covenant, saying that they were going to fight on the side against Home Rule. And whereas down south, Willie Redmond, the Dublin MP, he was the main instigator for Home Rule at the time. And so you had the formation of the UVF coming into play, and down in the nationalist side of things, you had the Irish Volunteers coming into play then as well. So both sides going to be butting heads against each other. But then when the First World War starts, then both sides then are looking to see who they're going to be looked after when the war was over.
It's a familiar story, isn't it? I mean, in terms of the history of this part of the island, it's a very familiar story in regards to this idea of seeking some level of separation or whatever else, and there being an opposition. Because ultimately, the idea behind Home Rule was that no longer would the island of Ireland be part of the United Kingdom.
Yes.
That it would be a separate entity of its own, and it wasn't the first time that this had happened. I think this is like this Home Rule Bill, like the third attempt at trying to get this idea of Home Rule introduced. And I think it's interesting as well, whenever you were talking there about the formation of the UVF, and that it was actually set up, it was almost like anti-government to a certain degree, because they were formed in ways like going, if you're intent on doing this, then we're going to fight this. This isn't going to. This doesn't sit well with us.
Correct.
And then I think maybe, as we said, maybe a bit. I hate saying that the First World War was fortuitous, but I think for the cause of Ulster, it was fortuitous because it kind of took away from that initial here that we're butting heads around Home Rule, staying part of the UK, this major event that then takes place in Europe. Britain's drawn into the war, and then obviously as a result of that, there's major conscription that goes on, and as a result of that, then what was the UVF becomes.
In Ireland, there was no conscription whatsoever. 1916 conscription was brought into England, and but in Ireland, right throughout the war, if you joined up, you were a volunteer.
Yeah, I think it's important to make that difference as well, isn't it? In terms of that, we're making a choice to go here rather than as we're saying with the rest of the UK, there was the conscription thing there. Okay, so. Talk to us a wee bit more about what went on then. So obviously the focus then changes. So the focus changes from the UVF being in this thing, the fight Home Rule, to then becoming integrated into part of the British Army to fight on another front.
That's right. Yeah. Carson, he offered up the men of the UVF when to the British government, and when the war did break out, and you had before the war, you had the UVF were well trained men because they were training up to go to fight against Home Rule. So you already had a sort of a quasi-army there
Yeah.
at that time.
So talk to us a wee bit about what that training process would have been like as they've made the shift then from being what was the UVF, obviously in terms of they'd have been running their own training camps as well, but then they're obviously being engrafted into the British Army. What did the preparations look like for?
At the start, when the different UVF, they were what was known as released into imperial service.
Okay.
When they left the UVF, my grandfather was in Seaford UVF, and I have his form they wrote, and it says on it, on the September the 17th, in 1914, he was released from the UVF into imperial service.
Okay,
So men are then that's them into the army. As I say, they're pretty well trained men. A lot of them they would have trained probably at the start with broomsticks and that,
Okay.
things like that. But then the weapons then come, and but they already had their guns from the gun running at Larne, and so these men, and they were geared up for the fight. They wanted to take the fight
Yeah.
to the Kaiser, to Germany.
Was there potentially a sense that we'll show you what we mean to you? Is there in terms of the
Yeah.
attitude? Is
Well,
that
that
what we
would
were
be,
going in?
yeah. But that would there would be an element of that definitely in it, that and a lot of the Ulster men, they were passionate and patriotic about their country, so they really would have wanted to show how good they were, and they did in the end.
Yeah. So when did they get deployed to France? When did it make the switch from either being, because they were based here for a while, weren't they? Then they moved
Yeah,
across.
they were based in different camps around the time. Finner Camp, Donegal, up at Randallstown as well, Ballykilner, and here at Clandyboy near us.
Sure.
And so after the 8th of May 1915, when the Ulster Division marched through Belfast, and they marched within a week or so, they're moving over to a little village in Sussex called Seaford,
Okay.
where they trained there for 4 months. Now, the villagers in Seaford were a bit apprehensive when they heard that all these Irishmen were coming over the land into their wee village.
Sure.
But they, after the 4 months were over and the Ulster Division were leaving, they actually the villagers put a plaque up to the Ulster men.
Right.
Because a lot of these men didn't drink, or
Okay.
and weren't ready, and so the villagers actually fell in love with them.
Right. Okay.
By early October 1915, the Ulster Division then has landed in France.
Okay. And then where were they deployed at first in France? Because they weren't directly they didn't head to the front line straight away.
Well,
did they?
no, the soldiers wouldn't have arrived right at the front line. They would have been, the Ulster Division would have been employed. They're coming into France, and then they're behind the lines really.
Sure.
And but then I think about around March time 1916, the Ulster Division are starting to move into the area of the Somme, and then they're along they would have ended up by June, May, June. They're around the Feetfall Wood area. They're in Feetfall Wood, and so they're gearing up then for the attack.
Okay, and then so what was happening at that time in the war that led to the decision for what became known as the Big Push? What was the circumstances behind that becoming the strategy of the British Army?
Well, what really the French, they were taking a lot of casualties because of Verdun on down the south, and the French army, they really wanted the British army then to start really, you would say, nearly pulling their weight type of thing, and so they thought that a diversion battle up at the Somme area would mean that the Germans would have to bring lots of reserves out of Verdun up to the Somme area, and that would relieve the French down in at Verdun, who were getting it really tough at that time.
Okay.
So that was the reasoning for the Somme battle starting to take
Okay.
place.
And is that how it panned out?
Well, it did. Well, they did bring troops would have been brought out of Verdun, but at the same time, it didn't work out the way it should have.
Okay.
So
Well, so talk to us a wee bit about, you know, what happened then on the 1st of July. I know obviously it's from a historic point of view, but try and give us maybe a sense of what might have been going on, because we hear the stories, you know, we hear
mhm,
about, you know, the bravery, we hear
mhm,
about, you know, the quotes about, you know, the people have never seen bravery like it, and
mhm.
you know, if they could have been an Ulster man, you know, then
Yes,
they would have
yeah, yeah.
wanted to have been that there. But
Hmm.
try and give us maybe a sense of what might have been going on with them, and some of the acts that maybe the Ulster Division were involved in that
Hmm.
makes them stand out.
Well, of course, on the 1st of July, you had four Victoria Cross winners uh, on the 1st of July with out of the Ulster Division, which was a tremendous achievement for them. And the bravery of these men, Captain Bell, Eric Norman Franklin Bell, he was in the Enniskillens and a very brave man. His platoon were being held up by a German machine gunner, and he went out himself and he shot the machine gunner dead. And then he was seen rallying his men, getting them on up towards the Schwaben Redoubt, and he was actually seen throwing trench mortar bombs down into the German
Right, right.
trenches. And then he was seen shooting at the Germans, and then he gathered up a lot of men who had lost their officers, and he was going to do another attack, and then he was killed.
Right, okay.
So very brave. William McFadzean, a trained bomb thrower, and he threw himself on top of grenades to save the lives of the men that were in the trenches with him.
Okay.
And he actually won the Victoria Cross before the Battle of the Somme had
Right,
even started.
right, okay.
So you had that was just two of the men, you
Yeah,
know.
so there was a lot, wasn't there? It was. I know from things that I've read that said that before the rest of the Ulster Division was out in front, and in terms of that, what they were had they taken the lead in regards to the
Well,
events on that day?
the Ulster Division they had went out. Uh, the Ulster Division they cut 9 saps in Thiepval Wood, and a sap was a thin trench that they had come out and while the big bombardment was still going on, and they had come out and they had laid down in no man's land,
Right.
and they were waiting on the whistle blowing at 7:30. So the order of the day was walk, and the Ulstermen they really ignored that order, and they had went out on ahead. Uh, Men were told to carry their rifle at port uh, like this and walk, and of course the men were just cut down like scythes in front of the
Yeah.
corn. So yeah, so
So we went our own way.
typical Ulstermen, I think, you know.
We went our own way. So they
Yeah.
went out ahead of the order. So they were already in no man's land
Yeah,
whenever the
yeah.
whistles went.
When the whistle blew then at 7:30, now you have to remember that the two divisions on the other side, the Ulster Division, you up on the right hand at Thiepval Village, uh, there wasn't a house left up at Thiepval Village on the ridge,
Okay.
but the Germans had kept all the cellars of the houses and used them as part of their reinforcements.
Sure.
And then on the other side, we had the Newfoundlanders, the 29th Division on the other side. And both of these, we had the Lancashire Fusiliers, the 32nd Division to our right. And both of these divisions there attack field right away.
Right.
So the Germans are then able to swing everything round. So the Ulstermen who are up in the Schwaben Redoubt, they pushed the Germans out of it very quickly and pushed the Germans out of it. But then the problems start with the two divisions failing
Yeah.
on each side. And the Ulstermen who are then now coming out of Thiepval Wood trying to reinforce the boys up at
You're
the
already there.
Schwaben.
Yeah.
they're being hit by what's known as enfilading fire.
Okay.
Feetfall Ridge, the Germans are standing on their parapets shooting at the men. So,
And is that where the majority of the casualties then came?
well, a lot of the casualties then would have come once that happened.
Once the flanks went down.
They had the Lancashire's artillery. They thought they seen their men heading up into the village, and they stopped their artillery. So that didn't help the Ulster men at all either. So and they had sent a message to the Lancashire, start up your artillery again, but they refused, thinking that they were firing on their own men.
So one of the things that we wanted to talk a wee bit about in this as well was in terms of trying to sort of reveal some of those kind of personal stories. I know there's obviously, there would have been letters sent home and stuff like that there. Then, but and I don't want, in terms of you being privy to maybe some of the letters are there. What kind of things would they have revealed about, the experience that the soldiers would have been having at the Somme?
Well, you see, a lot of these men, they don't want their family to know what the conditions they are in, they're living in, and what they're going through. They don't want their family back home to know this.
Sure.
So, plus you would have had censors who would have then censored. Officers would have censored the men's letters if they had put something down where they would stroke it out. And so a lot of the men didn't want their families to know just what was.
Okay, so there's in some senses you're trying to read between the lines then in terms of what they can and what they can't say. But it's fair to say that when we've had a look around some of the stuff here in the museum and stuff, that conditions weren't great. I mean, what they were experiencing day to day was beyond.
Yeah, well, you're experiencing mud. The week before the Battle of Somme, it rained every day. So the men were, it was coming up to the 1st of July, I think it was lovely sunny weather. It had rained every day, so the men were tramping in mud and carrying a lot of their supplies up into the wood, and it was just a mud heap. And you would be getting trench foot happening with men. And on the 1st of July, it turned out to be a lovely sunny day. But the before it, just rain, and a lot of these men, cold, hunger. A lot of times you didn't know when your next meal was coming from, and a warm meal might be
wishful thinking.
Yes, exactly. Although this 13th Royal Irish Rifles, the Down men, they got a breakfast at around 5 o'clock that morning of bread and bacon.
Sure.
So they did. So, but they might have been the lucky ones in the end,
So in terms of that, then obviously the day comes to an end to some degree, and but it's been brutal for everybody involved, hasn't it? And specifically the 36th were hit extremely hard in terms of casualties.
Yeah, well, 5,500 casualties with nearly 2,000 dead. Out of the British Army that day, 60,000 casualties with nearly 20,000 dead. And that's known as the blackest day in British military history. Still is to this day. And I would always say to the school kids, think of a football stadium with 60,000 people in it, and 20,000 of them are lying dead. So hard to get that into your
the visual there,
into your mind that happened.
Yeah, but what they did on the day lives long in the memory now, doesn't it? Because that's one of the reasons why we're here. That's one of the reasons why this museum exists, is because of what they did on the day. You've mentioned a couple of things in regards to sort of some of those acts. What are some of the other standout kind of stories that you have in regards to the bravery of the men?
Well, you're saying even about this is just a letter that it was a soldier called William Montgomery from just outside my hometown. And William, he was hit by shrapnel. He was in the 16th Royal Irish Rifles, the Pioneers, and he was hit by shrapnel and was taken to a hospital in England. And the doctors told him that they had to lift his heart out of the way to get at the shrapnel that was in his lungs.
Right.
and he had sent a letter home to his sister, and in the letter he had asked her to send soda bread and potato bread and a quart of buttermilk, because you couldn't get good buttermilk in England. And on the 17th of November 1916, he was going in for another operation,
Right.
and he died on the operating table. And the next day, the Battle of Somme ended, and his father and his uncle went back to England and brought him back, and he had the first, it was the first military funeral in our wee hometown,
Right, okay.
where they brought a party from Ards, who were the guard of honor over.
Yeah, but just shows you the mindset there, though, doesn't it? Just about needing this major operation, but hey, we need soda bread and all this kind
Yeah,
of stuff.
yeah.
Typical
That's,
Ulster man there. I don't think with the
that's
stomach and
right.
all that there,
Yeah,
but
yeah. But
but
that was just,
that's just a drop in the bucket,
yeah,
to be
that's,
honest with you,
yeah,
because I think if we were to talk about the stories of bravery that day, we'd be here all night.
no, there's millions of stories out there. I always say, and the great thing about the work we do out at the Ulster Tower, and you meet people who tell you stories of their loved
Yeah,
ones, and some of them, some of the stories are amazing. I had a guy who he was from Bolton, and he told me that his grandfather died in October 1919.
right.
And I went, what do you mean October 1919? He says he stayed behind and he was part of the burial parties. And he says one of his mates, there was Squad and Morgan, one of his mates had said about making a cup of tea. And so they got a fire going, get the kettle and all on it. And they lit the fire on top of a shell, and 6 of them were killed.
Whoa.
You know, a story like that. And he's Stan telling me this story in Thiepval Wood, and you know, Thiepval Wood it's such a special place that, you know, and you're hearing stories from people that are telling you things. You know,
Yeah.
it's hairs in the back of your neck.
And again, and as I was saying, probably with the amount of books and all of the other bits and pieces, I mean, I'm sure the half of it hasn't probably been told in regards to that, you know,
Yeah.
but it has left the experience of the 36th and the Ulster Division in terms of the Somme has left an indelible mark on the country, you know, in terms of, you know, it's a vivid memory. How would you say that memory has shaped maybe Northern Ireland's identity since those events?
I think I we all grew up, and you were told about the Somme, and every household, or the man on the street. When I was a young lad, you were walking past old soldiers, and you know they were just old boys to you, you know, but
Sure.
they were old soldiers. And nearly every household was affected by what happened on the 1st of July, and so it's a thing that is in. I think it's just in the vein of people
Yeah.
from here, and so
Because there was lots of families that were affected in a sense, because we were looking at some of the names on some of the plaques and stuff here. And it was amazing just how many of the same family name are listed
yes,
one under the other. And it wasn't just a case of, you know, just it being scattered. The impact in terms of what happened at the Somme and the First World War as a whole left a major hole in terms of the communities in Northern
yeah,
Ireland, didn't
yeah,
it?
or
I mean,
did.
there was villages that were, you
Mhm.
know, in terms of there was generations of people were wiped out, and it
That's
had a
right. Yeah.
long-term impact on the
Mhm.
country as a whole, didn't it?
Oh yeah, down in Cumber, there's a family called Donaldson, and Samuel, James, and John all killed. So they're like, how can you go back to a mother and tell her that her 3 sons are all gone? You
Yeah.
know, we have another on a plaque here, the Edmonds brothers, all 3 killed. So
And that's not isolated. So
no,
it's not. I mean,
no,
that's a story that's
no.
repeated over and
Another
over.
in my hometown, there was a gentleman, Jimmy Dornan, and he lived in his house, he had a big garden out the back, which reached up to the church,
Mm-hmm.
and he spent all his time in his garden. He wouldn't come out onto the street in case he met somebody that he knew had lost somebody.
Right.
He couldn't cope
Right.
with meeting somebody. Uh, you know,
Wow. Yeah, and I suppose that's I suppose
like a
what we would
survivor's guilt type
the
of thing.
survivor's guilt, but it's also I suppose what we would now call the trauma
Yeah, the
attached
shell
to the
shock or
yeah
whatever.
well,
Yeah,
what was called shell shock at the
yeah,
time. Obviously, we now know to be
yeah,
trauma or PTSD or
yeah,
whatever
yeah.
in terms of that. But and even that has had a long term effect
Oh
on the
yes.
country in terms of that
Hmm.
because you get
Yeah,
people living with the effects of that and what
yeah.
that meant for people at
Hmm.
homes and families and
Yes,
stuff.
yes.
Nobody knew what to do in terms
Yeah.
of dealing with that, really. Like, you
I
know.
had a lady came in one time, and she was from Cavan, and she was an elderly lady, and she told me about her father who had went off to the war, and she says when he came back, he tortured her mother,
Right.
and he died when she was 6 years of age, and she says it was the best thing ever happened because uh, his her mother told her that the man who went off to war wasn't the man who came back.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, so that how people are affected, and
It's
you
the
know, and overall, in the whole scheme of things, that yeah, I think all our identities, a lot of it comes from there,
yeah.
comes out of there, and I think, and here at the museum we try to show uh, all sides
Sure.
of what happened here, uh, both sides of the community suffered
Yeah, I
just
mean,
as
and
equally,
that's a thing,
you know.
I think it's not just something in terms of that we own in terms of a
No,
heritage
correct,
here.
correct.
It's not a unionist loyalist thing.
No.
It's wider than that.
Yeah, yeah.
And we have to remember that
Hmm.
even those who had signed up for the Irish volunteers and stuff,
Hmm.
there was a large proportion of
Yeah,
people that were then ended up
yeah.
fight within in the ranks
In
of the British
my
Army.
hometown, there was a larger percent of Catholics joined than
Hmm.
Protestants, and
Right.
it's a predominantly Protestant town.
Yeah.
You know.
See, and this is the thing, and I think that that sometimes in the way that things are today in regards to the political landscape
Hmm.
is that there's I suppose in some sense, some of the historical stuff gets hijacked by political agendas,
Yes.
and or it's utilized in a particular way to promote a particular viewpoint as
Yeah.
well, or to reinforce why we don't get involved with certain people because
Yeah.
of I suppose is that sense of colonialism and all that kind
Hmm.
of thing,
Yeah.
and the oppressive
Hmm.
nature of the British government and all that kind of stuff,
Hmm.
that but we don't want that to take away from the reality of the stories that are there because
Yeah.
these are the facts.
Yeah.
And facts don't care about your feelings and facts don't care about
Correct.
your political perspective.
That's true.
The facts of the matter is there was massive loss in this island as a
Yeah.
result of
Of it. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. There
yeah,
was. Yeah. Uh, there's the Irish Book of the Great War Dead. It's like 50,000 names of Irishmen
yeah,
who died, and it was Irishmen.
sure, yeah.
Too. I have my grandfather's psalm book, and it says on it, the Presbyterian Church of Ireland.
Yeah.
You know, that's
And
what it
I suppose it's
says.
a different, era back then because I think maybe in that time, people from Ulster wouldn't have thought about, they'd have called it potentially would have called themselves Irish or whatever else. There would
Well,
have
they
been
would
an
have.
element
Yeah.
of that, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think there's maybe something as well in this that while that is it's part of that story, but there's also part of the story related to the Somme that almost separates the Ulster man out.
Hmm.
And in terms of
Hmm.
this is what we done, this is how we did it,
Yeah.
and the mark that left
Yeah.
across the whole of not just here,
Yeah.
but the whole of the UK. I mean, people everywhere talks about what happened with the 36. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
That's
We can't
true.
get away
Yeah.
from that.
No. No. It they took their objective.
Yeah,
On that day they took their objective,
yeah.
and there's not too many really in the end can say
Say
that.
that, yeah, no, and
They
well,
lost it by night time, but
but at the end, I mean, and pretty much in a catch-22 scenario in regards to, as you say, the plans were in place, but obviously when certain things didn't go to plan, then the gains that we had made in terms of the Ulster Division were lost completely because of this capitulation, wasn't it?
Well, with the both sides failing with the Ulster Division, that was the main thing that didn't help them that day. But there was talk the Ulster Division got so far. They got so far the German lines, and but I remember reading an account where it says that a train pulled up into the village of Grand Cour, and the Germans were piling out of it, getting ready for the counter attacks that were going to happen later on in that afternoon,
Right.
and that night. And I have a vivid sort of a picture of a train pull and all these Germans jumping out, getting ready, whereas the Ulster men by this stage, they've been fighting all
day.
morning,
Yeah.
and probably poor guys probably never slept a wink the night before.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, and it's, I suppose, but it is one of those things that's part of, just it's almost become like it's almost the things of legend now, isn't it? In terms of
There's like a mistake to it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and as you say, a thing of legend, that would be right. But
No, and I think
that's why we're here.
yeah, exactly. Well, and that's part of the reason why we're here today is because if they hadn't done what they've done and the contribution that made to shifting things in terms, because ultimately, things started to move on after that in regards to, because ultimately the end of the war was, hey, Germany ended up being defeated and stuff, and the division obviously played a major part, not just at the Somme, but in other places as well in regards to contributing to that. And talking about contributions, then, what contribution do you think the Somme Museum here does in terms of preserving, I suppose,
We
an
have
appropriate
we have a big
remembrance?
education program here, and we have lots of schools coming. And on Thursday we have 180 school kids coming, and we'll be doing tours all in the morning, in the afternoon. 3 guides on a rota system,
Right.
and so in the schools we're getting a lot of schools coming. A lot of schools coming out to France, the Ulster Tower. We do a lot of school groups there, and we just we try to educate the young ones just on the story of it all, and we're really trying to maybe. I always like to think if you can get a young student and you get a spark off them, and maybe that spark will carry on. Maybe some young one you're talking to, and you think, well, 20 years down the line, I might be doing my job, or
Okay.
that has that sort of passion for it.
Sure.
And at the museum, that's what we do. We try to just to teach them just of what went on.
But it's not just open to school groups,
No, all groups. We have bands come down, lodges come down. We have all different groups from all over, of all
Sure.
different types of, Women's Institute, different things like
Sure.
that. All would come down to us. So yeah, all types of groups come to us.
Yeah, and it's all about preserving the legacy of what happened at the Somme, because we talk. So it's all about preserving that legacy of the Somme, because we talk a lot about, during Remembrance Day, or you'll see obviously, lest we forget, and this idea that, if we were to forget this, then we would be cutting something almost of our soul
Yeah,
out if we were
yeah,
to miss out on this. Yeah.
yeah. Well, and this is for museum. We have got so many different artifacts that people have entrusted to us, and with letters that of people's stories, and so we have all that, and we're the sort of repository of it all. You know what I mean? We keep and then try and get as much out there for people to see, and
Yeah,
You know,
that's impressive. I have to say. Obviously, we've had a look around in terms of tonight and stuff. You know,
mhm,
and some of the things are absolutely amazing in terms of, and even some of
mhm,
the stories
mhm.
that are attached. Because I'm sure everything here there's a story
Story to
behind
it.
it.
Oh yeah,
There's a
yeah,
story, a
yeah,
personal story behind that.
yeah.
What role would you say the song continues to have in terms of trying to influence future generations? I know you talked about there about the school kids, you know, but how can we ensure that it's remembered appropriately?
Well, things like the museum and trying to educate uh, kids. I think it's mostly all down to education,
Yeah,
and trying to instill in them that these are our ancestors done this, and
yeah.
you should be very proud of them.
Yeah. No, and I think that that's important as well, you know, because as each generation comes along, you know, we don't want it to dilute in any shape or
Yeah,
form, you
yeah.
know, because they say that, you know, that once the
Well,
generations pass, it kind of can dilute, you know.
well, I
So,
think my generation was the last generation really who could have reached out and touched an old soldier,
yeah,
and but I think well, our kids going to think maybe like what I would have thought of Waterloo,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
that type of
for
thing,
sure.
so far back that it didn't connect. And we can only hope that they
No, but I think maybe what you're doing here gives people maybe the opportunity to still have that option of maybe not physically reaching out and touching an old shoulder, but having the option of being able to connect to the
connect to it.
story
Yeah.
that allows you to almost reach out
Yes.
and touch. Because at the end of the day, you know, we look at some of the even the artifacts that are behind us and things
Mhm.
that we've walked past as we've come around here. As I say, those belong to someone.
Yeah.
You know, and while there may be some do not touch signs and stuff
Yeah.
like that there, but really a lot of that stuff is within touching distance.
Yeah.
The fact
Yeah.
that it's here and the
Hmm.
way that it's been presented gives
Yeah.
us that kind of sense of being able to, you know, keep that not just in here,
Yeah.
but to try and put it
In
here,
there. Yeah.
you know, because I think there's definitely been a growth in the last 5 to 10 years in regards to there seems to be a resurgence of people wanting to connect with their history
Hmm.
and the amount of groups that are going
Hmm.
to the
Yeah.
song, going to the
Yeah.
battlefield tours and
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
You'll know this in regards to
Yes.
what you're doing,
Hmm.
especially for the bonds and the loyal orders and stuff.
Hmm.
Like every other week now, it seems to be
Yeah.
there's a group over doing
Yes.
stuff, and that has taken a bit of time. And I think there's maybe a connection with that as the ebb of time flows.
Hmm.
That we're like, hey, we need to hold on
Making a conscious
conscious
effort.
effort to really
Yeah.
hold on to what's important to us. And
Yeah.
it's great to see.
Yeah. Oh,
So
yeah.
it's fantastic to see,
Definitely.
you know, in
Definitely.
regards to that.
Yeah.
And I know you've been to the battlefields
Yeah.
many times. And
Uh-huh.
obviously there's staff that are connected to here that work at the Ulster Tower
Yeah.
as well. Isn't that right? So,
I'm going out on Monday for
okay,
3 weeks. So
brilliant.
yeah.
Well, listen, Austin, appreciate you taking the time out to share some of your recollections in terms of the history side of things, but also maybe connecting this with the, you know, where it stands for us today. And it's been an
Mhm.
absolute privilege for us to talk to you
My
in
pleasure.
regards to that there. And I know we've obviously, there's a lot more for us to do tonight in terms of what we're looking at and that kind of, but I just want to say, I appreciate you taking the time and the effort to spend with us, man. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Brilliant. So, folks, that brings us to the end of another episode of the Made to Pray podcast. I hope I don't want to say enjoyed that, but I hope that you've got something from watching that and listening into Austin and having a look at all of the artifacts that exist here. So, as we leave the Somme Museum today, we're taking with us more than memories of a battle that was fought long ago. We're carrying with us the stories of men from Ulster, their courage, their sacrifice, and I suppose their unwavering sense of duty as well. Their legacy is woven into Northern Ireland's identity, and it's a reminder that the past isn't just something we leave behind, but it actually lives within us. And it shapes us into who we are and who we aspire to be. So as we honour their memory, we also honour the enduring spirit of Ulster, standing strong, even in the face of the greatest adversity. Until the next episode, folks, look after yourselves and take it easy.